Hey, it's Tom here and welcome back to the channel. Now, big news out of the Daily Journal Corporation today, and that is that Charlie Munger is stepping down as the chairman of Daily Journal. This is pretty big news, so I kind of wanted to jump on it as quickly as possible. It's about 7 p.m. in the evening as I'm filming this video. I almost never record videos in the evening. I'm usually filming at like 7 a.m. So I thought it was big enough news to warrant kind of jumping on really quickly. And one of the other reasons I wanted to do that is because I think if you just read the initial headline that Charlie Munger is stepping down as chairman of the Daily Journal, it can be pretty misleading and can, cause you to jump to some quick, potentially incorrect conclusions if you don't kind of dig below the surface a little deeper. So I want to kind of give you the full bit of news out of Daily Journal today that Charlie Munger is stepping down as the chairman of DJCO, but also what his future role will look like, because he is actually continuing on with the company. And I also want to spend a little bit of time just talking through a bit of kind of the history of Daily Journal, because I think it's phenomenally impressive. And DJCO has actually been more than a 200 bagger since it was first acquired by Charlie Munger in the 1970s alongside his partner at the time, Rick Guerin. So that is the topic for today's video. If you do enjoy it, please hit like and also subscribe to the channel if you are new here. But without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so firstly, here's the main news that you need to know out of Daily Journal. As always, link in the description if you want to read the full SEC filing. So this is dated March 28th, 2022, and it says, Daily Journal Corporation is pleased to announce that Steve Myhill-Jones has been selected as the company's new chairman and interim CEO effective today. Mr. Myhill-Jones will succeed Jerry Salzman as CEO. Mr. Salzman is retiring after more than 44 years of dedicated and multifaceted service to the company. Charles Munger will relinquish the chairman title, but will continue serving as director, and as such will continue to pay particular attention to matters with which he has been involved in the past, including the company's securities portfolio. Mr. Myhill-Jones is a Canada-based technology executive, entrepreneur, and investor. He founded and bootstrapped web-based geography software company Latitude Geographics at the age of 23. Latitude, now VertiGIS, grew to a global client base of 1,400 clients, from small municipalities to Fortune 500 companies and the US, before being acquired in 2017. Mr. Myhill-Jones has also been an angel investor and an advisor and mentor to technology businesses and entrepreneurs. We're incredibly fortunate that Stephen found his way into our lives. He's whip smart and full of energy, said Mr. Munger. He's exactly the kind of leader we need at Daily Journal and Journal Technologies to take our business into the future. Stephen was part of a team that built a very successful technology company out of nothing, and he ran it for a long period of time with tenacity, patience, and a focus on customer service, and he's hungry to do more. Jerry has spent more than half his life working at the Daily Journal, and he's 83 years old. Imagine that. And he did it all. A director, president, CEO, and CFO, said Mr. Munger. His ability to wear so many hats was a crucial part of what helped our little company grow, evolve, and expand. He led the company during an incredibly challenging time for newspapers, while also building out a promising court software in what is a terribly difficult but dynamic market. It's impossible to imagine a more capable manager or better teacher, and the shareholders of the company owe Jerry a big debt of gratitude. And the SEC filing goes on to give a couple of quotes from the new CEO, but effectively that is kind of the full update out of DJCO. So I saw a lot of headlines kind of floating around today about how Charlie Munger is stepping down as the chair at Daily Journal, but there's a few things to kind of note there. So Charlie Munger is going to continue on as a director. He's still going to be looking after the stock portfolio, which is a huge chunk of Daily Journal's equity. And we also actually have a new chief executive officer taking over from Jerry Salzman. And if you don't know who Jerry Salzman is, you should now, hopefully. He's been the CEO of Daily Journal for a long period of time. And if you've ever watched any of the Daily Journal Corporation meetings, he's basically the guy sitting next to Charlie that answers the occasional question as well. So to me, it's very cool to see Charlie continuing on, and also to see kind of a new executive come in with hopefully a little bit more youth and energy to really drive Journal Technologies in particular forward. When I first actually saw some of the headlines for this one that, Charlie was stepping down, I got a little concerned. Charlie's 98 years old now, and it was only probably less than a couple of months ago, maybe 2 months ago, that at the Daily Journal meeting, he basically said, you know, he would continue to, you know, run the stock portfolio at Daily Journal until he's sufficiently impaired, I think is how he kind of worded it. So when I initially saw that, you know, Charlie was stepping back, I was kind of fingers crossed he's okay. I think by the standards of most 98-year-olds, Charlie's probably doing pretty well, and you know, pretty excited to see that he's continuing to look after the you know, the securities portfolio at Daily Journal. Now for the second half of this video, I just want to cover a bit of the kind of general timeline for Daily Journal and a bit of the company history for maybe anyone that hasn't come across it before. Now, big shout out here to Matthew Peterson, who is of Peterson Capital Management. I've had him on the podcast before, and he is the go-to guy if you ever want to learn about Daily Journal from a potential, you know, investment perspective. So in one of Matt's presentations, he actually did a nice sort of history summary of Daily Journal, and it's been through some pretty cool phases. Now, Charlie Munger and his partner at the time, Rick Guerin, who was also listed as one of the super investors of Graham and Doddsville, he's actually the guy that had the best returns, I think, in that famous speech from Warren Buffett. Charlie and Rick acquired the Daily Journal Corporation for $2 million in 1977. Now, as of recording this video, the market cap for the Daily Journal is about $430 million. So to go from 2 million to 430 is about 215 bagger, you know, well north of 100 bagger, and it was over a long period of time, so that was from 1977 till obviously 2022, but if you run the maths on that, it comes out at about 12.5% per year compounded over that entire period of time, which is very solid returns over a, you know, long period of time, multi-decade period of time, and I think exponentially more impressive if you consider that the core business of Daily Journal effectively went to zero. They started off as a legal kind of publishing business, legal newspaper business, in a very niche market, I think specifically in Los Angeles, maybe California more broadly, but I think it was mainly LA. That business was to a large extent disrupted by the internet, and you know, effectively I think it still does like $1 million a year in revenue, but in the kind of grand scheme of Daily Journal today, it effectively went to zero. So, you know, for that to happen to a core business and for it still to be like a 200 plus bagger over several decades is exceptionally impressive. And here's kind of what that journey looked like and some of the, you know, key points throughout the evolution of Daily Journal. So in 1977, Charlie Munger and Rick Guerin buy the Daily Journal Corporation for $2 million US. From 1977 through to 2009, so quite a long period of time there, but it compounds at about 10.5% per year. So we go from, you know, first acquisition through to basically deep in the financial crisis, compounded at about 10% or so per year. Obviously, the core business was starting to really go through some big struggles by that point in time, just through technological disruption, basically like any newspaper business was, you know, through the early 2000s. But nonetheless, they compounded at about 10.5% per year, and that is really where Charlie Munger and Rick Guerin made one of kind of their most famous moves at DJCO. So much like Warren Buffett did at Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie and Rick basically recognized that their core business was not doing well, and they started to focus on taking some of the capital that was kind of still remaining from that core business and, you know, looked for places to allocate it elsewhere. And of course, at the time in 2009, we're in the depths of the financial crisis, and Charlie Munger and Rick Guerin put a substantial amount of Daily Journal's equity into a handful of bank stocks, and those stocks were bought, you know, basically right at the bottom of the financial crisis. You know, Charlie and Rick were clearly right on the prospects of the business long term, but they really did fluke it a little bit with their timing and almost, you know, bottom ticking it to the day in the financial crisis when they bought these bank stocks. And they've basically held them ever since. So if you still look at the Daily Journal Corporation 13F, it's still filled with Bank of America, Wells Fargo, US Bancorp, and those stocks have been held since 2009. Because they timed that investment so well and they did it with such a large chunk of Daily Journal's equity, from 2009 to 2013, the market cap compounded at 30% a year. And then in 2012/2013, that was when kind of the next big milestone happened for Daily Journal, where they purchased what was at the time called New Dawn and ISD, and similar to what they've done kind of recently with Alibaba, which I'll talk about in a sec, they actually bought those subsidiaries using a $30 million margin loan, And those two subsidiaries are basically today what is known as Journal Technologies. So it's this court administration software. If you've looked at DJCO before, you'll know that they have these big contracts with courthouses in Australia and with many parts of the US as well, and that's kind of one of the big kind of parts of the investment thesis moving forward at Daily Journal. But they bought that in 2012 and 2013, and if we fast forward through to 2021, that is really when the next big move happened at Daily Journal. And that big move, as has been talked about countless times here on YouTube in the past year or so, was to start allocating a significant amount of capital again to a stock. And rather than making kind of a basket bet on financials like they did in the financial crisis, this time Charlie Munger went towards buying Alibaba. Now this in fact isn't the first Chinese stock that the Daily Journal Corporation have purchased. We know that they also have a big holding in BYD, although we get a bit less clarity around that specific holding just because of its international nature essentially. But if we look at the 13F for the Daily Journal Corporation portfolio today, we'll see that they have a little over 600,000 shares or ADRs in Alibaba. The value of those shares at current market prices is around 71 million US dollars. Again, compare that to about the $430 million market cap for Daily Journal, and you can see it's a pretty significant investment. Again, some of this investment was funded with margin, as seems to have been done at a few points through Daily Journal's life cycle here, but that was kind of the next big move at Daily Journal, and we'll have to wait and see how that one plays out. So reasonably short video here tonight on some of the news out of Daily Journal, as well as kind of some of the history if you're not familiar with the Daily Journal Corporation and kind of how that got started for Charlie Munger. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on this news and kind of the Daily Journal's trajectory to where they've got to today down in the comment section below. Keen to hear your thoughts on that one. In my book's a very impressive story, 12.5% compounded over a long period of time. Is pretty respectable. It's not a spectacular Warren Buffett 20% a year record, but I think if you put that in the context of having a core business that basically died and still being able to compound at 12.5% a year for decades and create a 200x return from that initial investment, that's pretty mind-boggling achievement in my book. So like I say, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.